Catherine, stop. I'd scream when she'd sing it, and she'd just cackle and sing it louder. I can only still remember my sister's face because of that ghoulish smile she wore while she tormented me. We grew up in New Zealand, so the shanty was something we sort of came up with, and many of the kids sang it, but my sister was the first to adopt it into something different from the original. A few kids had added some creative lyrics to the original, but Catherine had turned it into a song about the bunny man. She was forbidden from singing it at school by her parents and the teachers at the middle school we attended. She took it as an excuse to sing it for me at every opportunity. It was usually sung low or under her breath so my parents couldn't hear it, so she could deny it when I went to them crying about it. It was in poor taste anyway. The bunny man may have been an urban legend, but the man going kidnapping children was very real. That summer, 13 children had gone missing in the city we lived in. All of them were from poor families like ours, who lived in timid buildings like ours. They always disappeared in the middle of the night, after being lured out of their home, and there was always some sign left behind that tied them together. Whether it was spray painted on the door, the fence behind the house, or the side of the building they lived in. The calling card was always left in the plain white spray paint for the police to find. A white rabbit head in a white circle. The sign of the bunny man. My sister had started humming the little shanty after the seventh kid had gone missing. I had heard it in her room, working through the lyrics as we did homework. She would hum to herself in the way that distracted people do when she's trying to figure something out. She scratched away at math problems, and she would argue with herself and make corrections to the grisly shanty she was constructing. I would shudder to myself as I heard what she was writing, and it became her horrified little barometer. The more I shuddered, the more lyrics I heard that stayed in place. By the time school started in August, her shanty had taken form and she began her region of terror. Catherine and I were 2 years apart. I had started 6th grade as she started 8th, and she seemed to delight in terrorizing the other girls in my class with her Bunny Man song. And she would walk behind groups of students, humming the tune at first as they walked to class for lunch. Then, she would begin to sing the words to herself, low at first, a bullying volume, until a few of them started to hear what she was singing and became noticeably upset. Then, she would run up behind the group, caterwauling the last verse as she sent them screaming and running in all directions. That's how she earned herself a suspension from school and a grounding by her parents. She was home that night, the night of December 15th, and the night the Bunny Man indeed come. We were both grounded that night, actually. My sister was grounded after being suspended from school for her Bunny Man shenanigans. She didn't care much, and she was happy to put off her schoolwork and watch TV all day, suffering the wrath of our parents. I, however, was grounded for encouraging these antics by saying I had seen the Bunny Man. It wasn't a joke, though. I was trying to encourage Catherine in her bad behavior. I had woken up for 6 nights in a row, hearing someone humming that shanty and going to the window to see who it was. I couldn't actually be hearing anyone, I realized now. Our loft was on the 15th floor, looking out on the vacant lot and road behind the building. There was no way I should have been able to hear anything. I could though. I could clearly remember hearing the shanty hummed in a Grey Valley baritone that sounded as though it ran outside my window. The first few times I heard it, I went to the window and looked out on the lot. In the moonlight, there he would stand in the road. A man in a dingy gray rabbit costume, his eyes glowing yellow and ears cocked almost jantily. My parents would hear me screaming and come running into my room to see what was going on. They would find me on my floor, screaming and pointing out the window, always gibbering about the bunny man. After the third night, I didn't even go to the window. I would lay in bed and sob as the shanty bore into my brain. I would sob and call for them, screaming about the bunny man until finally my father couldn't take it anymore. That's why both of us were grounded on the night in question, and our parents were out. It was supposed to be a family night. We were supposed to go out and have a meal as a family, see a movie, and maybe get some ice cream. Instead, my father had been using it as a punishment for my sister after she had gotten in trouble. We three would go out and have some fun while she stayed home and did not. My mother, however, thought this was a little harsh, and she had been pleading for him to reconsider all this week. This had made him a little short, and after being woken up by screaming all this week, he had reached his limit. He had grounded me as well, thinking I was trying to egg my sister on with all this bunny man nonsense, and announced that he and my mother were going on a date instead. We'll be back at 10. You two are to be in bed by 8:30. If I come in and you're still awake, you'll be severely punished. Then they had left, and for a few hours, we had gotten along pretty well. Catherine made dinner, heating up some canned pasta in the microwave. And then we'd watch some TV as the sunset and the evening wore on. It wasn't until 8, when I got off the couch and started for bed, that she started in her old ways. She asked what I was doing, and then I told her I was going to bed. She asked why. You heard Dad. If we're still up when he gets here, then we'll get in trouble. You're probably just scared that the bunny man will hear you while you're awake and come get you. I'm not, I lied. You are too. I was just in such a hurry to go to sleep, so the bunny man will come and peek at you while you're asleep. Cut it out, Catherine. She leaned towards me, grinning that awful grin. Oh, there once was a man with ears, you see. I put my hands over my ears and started running away as she sang all the louder and chased me. At the dead of the night, he'll come for thee. Stop it, Catherine, I sobbed. We were running up the hall, and as I wheeled into my room, I tried to slam the door and lock her out. She batted the door aside and bore down on me, grinning and singing as I covered beneath the window. I was covering my head with my arms, sobbing uncontrollably as I tried to block her out. She stalked towards me, bellowing the song now, and snitching her hands like claws as she walked towards me. Soon shall the bunny man come to. But she stopped suddenly, and as the silence stretched on, I opened my eyes and looked up to find her looking out the window as she loomed over me. She was staring out the window, transfixed by whatever she saw there. In this new game, I was almost scarier than the shanty. Her face held a look I was unused to seeing. She was startled, unsure of what she was seeing. But it also appeared that there was terror there. Something outside the window had really spooked her, and I scrambled up to peek under her arm so I could see it. It seemed I was peeking into one of my nightmares. Standing under the road, right under the street light, was a man in a tattered gray bunny costume. It wasn't like a Halloween costume, some of which looked more like pajamas than a costume, but it was a full suit of coarse-looking gray fur. The hair was matted in dark places. The fur tangled like a stuffed animal that needs to be brushed. The head was obscured by a black hood, some kind of costume hood that just slid over the head. In the face was a flat black nothing as it stared at our building. On top of the hood, someone had stapled a pair of thin, incapacitated gray rabbit ears, one which bent at an almost chanty angle. He stood on the street and stared up at us. My sister and I froze in terror. at a sight of the legendary Bunny Man. Once at all, I heard a gruff, tuneless humming from the street that sounded startlingly like Catherine's shanty. He had no words to go along with it. He only hummed and stared, and I think we both felt an almost magnetic desire to stare back at him. It was like the scene in a horror movie where the monster is out in the open, and you pray that none of the characters are stupid enough to go confront him. In your heart, though, you know one of them is. Catherine, it appeared, was that one. I caught her by the arm as she turned from the window. She looked back at me, her face full of confusion and anger and unsure deliberation. She was clearly at odds with herself, and my sister was not someone who was used to being unsure of her actions. She was a brat, but I always kind of believed that everything she did was a calculated course of risk and rewards. This was something else, though. This was her acting against her will. After all, she had sung about the bunny man coming for others. It appeared to be her he had come for. She jerked her hand away and left my room. When I heard the front door open and close, I moved to the back. She had jerked her hand away and left my room. When I heard the front door close and open, I moved back to the window, waiting for her to appear. The bunny man, right on humming, right on watching, as though he were trying to call me as well. I felt the pull, I really did, but my fear kept me rooted to the spot. I clutched the window still tightly, the paint chipping a little as my fingers gripped it, and I would find splinters under my nails the next day, though I didn't notice the rest of the night. And then, as she appeared in the backyard, walking like a sleepwalker and going to him as she vaulted the chain-linked fence between the yard and the road. He reached for her hand, and now I could hear both of them humming that hateful song and staring up at me. It felt like my head was filled with a hive of bees, and I knelt my head down against the glass as I prayed that it would stop. There would be no way I could resist if they both sang, and I could feel the pull as they tried to drag me out of the door as well. After about 60 seconds of them humming and staring, she took his hand, and the two of them disappeared up the road. My parents came home 3 hours later to find me curled up on the floor of my bedroom, sobbing and gibbering. My parents came home 3 hours later to find me curled up on the floor of my bedroom, sobbing and gibbering as I rocked and mumbled about the bunny man. They searched the house immediately, thinking that my sister had gone too far now. She had finally scared me too much, and now she was going to have to answer for it. As my mother sat with me, trying to console me, and my father tore up the house looking for her. He clearly expected her to be hiding somewhere inside, probably running, when she heard the front door open. When he couldn't find her inside, he went looking at her friends' house. Their parents told him, often grumpily, that they hadn't seen Catherine, but they would call him if they did. He got worried then, going to look up and down the street for her, expecting her to have hidden somewhere in fear of retribution. All the while, Mom tried to calm me down and get a straight answer out of me. After about an hour, I started talking about the bunny man and how he had come to get us and how Catherine had left with him. She started to get angry and telling me that she was tired of hearing about the bunny man. However, when I refused to deviate from my story, she started to take me a little more seriously. The police were called, the neighborhood was searched, people were questioned, and the woods were combed for the next week and a half. No sign was ever found of my sister or the bunny man. No sign was ever found by the children abducted by the bunny man that year. That was 15 years ago. The bunny man took only one more child that year, a 7-year-old girl on Christmas Eve. Then, she was never seen again. They never found any of the remains of any of the children he had kidnapped. and no one was ever arrested in connection with the kidnappings. There was never any bunny suit found or a murder weapon discovered in the woods. Whoever was doing these things just stopped. I'm 27 now, and my own daughter is 8. Her dad's not really in the picture, which leaves a lot of time for us. I was getting ready for bed one night, Emily playing in her room before bedtime, when I heard something that made me stop, dead in my tracks. The tune, a familiar tune that everyone in my town knew, crept up the hallway. The tune wasn't what stopped me. It was the lyrics that made me shiver. The words she sang transported me back in time, and suddenly, I was 12 years old and watching my older sister creep towards me as she sang those same hateful words. However, the voice that sang them was childish, singing the words with no more care than she would have had for any nursery rhyme. I peeked around the corner of the doorframe and saw her on the floor playing with blocks, oblivious to what she was singing. "Emily?" I asked, trying not to let her know that she had spooked me. "Where did you hear that song?" She got up and walked to her bed, giggling as she called under the covers. "From the funny lady." "Oh, what funny lady?" I asked, bending to tuck her in but finding my hands incapable. "She comes and sings at night, and sometimes, after you go to sleep, I'll wake up and hear her singing. When I go to the window, she's standing out on the street. She has ears on the top of her hoodie, Mommy. Isn't that silly?" I told her it was, but I didn't feel like laughing in the least bit. Emily is in my bed now, sleeping soundly as I pin this warning to anyone whose children have may heard this song too. I'm afraid it's not an urban legend. It's not a hoax. The Bunny Man is real, and it seems that he's not the only one anymore. He is coming for our children again, and I, for one, don't mean to lose my daughter to this creep or his children. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this story for today. And without further ado, I'll see you guys in the next story. So sit back, relax, and listen.